What up, friends? We can take another look at Demetrious Johnson. I was just on Periscope here with some friends. I'm trying really hard to figure out how to properly describe Demetrious Johnson. And that's been the challenge. The reason this conversation's about Demetrious, he's fighting Ray Borg at the time I'm recording this weekend at UFC 216. I did a bit of an analysis piece. If you go back, go to the videos section and go back 10 or 12 or 15 pieces. We do record a lot, eh? We do. It's a real pleasure. Go back 10 or 12 or 15 pieces. You'll see fight preview, UFC, whatever it was at the time, Borg versus Demetrious Johnson. And in it, I talked about the truth that can Ray Borg beat Demetrious Johnson, one of the greatest fighters in the world? Of course he can. Do we expect him to? No, because a lot of things have to happen for that to happen, you know? Please go back and take a look at that if you're interested in that, but it is always possible. It always is. Just because you haven't seen the evidence of it doesn't mean it isn't there yet. And just because somebody has performed near perfect doesn't mean they always will. Off nights exist. And they happen sometimes because you didn't treat the performance the way you always have. You know, George St. Pierre looks back at his loss to Matt Serra, and when he compares it to every other performance he had, there are terms we use, and part of this conversation is going to be about language, because the challenge for me is to properly describe Demetrious Johnson. But when George St. Pierre looked back to his loss to Matt Serra, Matt's a genius. Matt's incredibly special. He was the welterweight champion of the world by KOing George St. Pierre, and he deserved it, and he'll have it forever, and that's his, and he has every right to that. George, when he looks at it from his perspective, sees that he didn't approach it the way he always did. He was a different George St. Pierre that night. And he'll say it without trying to undermine Matt. That's just the truth. And in my opinion, that doesn't undermine Matt. That's George's responsibility. But if you do not go in the way that you need to go in, you're not the same person. So that's always possible. But if you'd like, go back and watch that piece. But this conversation I'm having, I was with my friends on Periscope trying to work out some of the ideas. The issue I'm having is describing Demetrious Johnson. It is, and if you've been following me, you know that sometimes I end up down different hallways and pathways and routes in my curious, ongoing, for the rest of my life, exploration of martial arts. And when you train martial arts, you find plateaus, places where you must see something different or understand something differently, or sometimes even go back, or even dissolve what you already believe so fully to be true to be able to find the route past that plateau. Bruce Lee's talked about it. Even Conor McGregor looks at that as something. And he follows in Bruce Lee's teachings. Many of the guys do. They're not all as vocal, or they don't all have as big a voice. But we have to do that. And to describe what Demetrious Johnson really does, this has been our failing. It's been our failing. People like me. It's our job. What are we doing here? Are we here to get our chance to say knockout power with both hands in a suit on TV, change to the other camera angle and say, well, Karen, the NFL or CNN, or this is not a fighting thing. I'm not trying to be critical of people in fighting. Interviewer, I think that Trump did this, or I think the NFL did that, or I think Conor McGregor did this. Is that what we're doing here? Or are we really trying to follow our curiosity to find the truth and share it with people? Because if we're doing that, when it comes to Demetrious Johnson, we have done a fucking piss poor job of it. And we look and see why that is. Why can we not explain how he's the greatest fighter of all time, and why he's the greatest fighter, and even what it is he's actually doing? Why can we not explain that? And I think partly it's the system that we've all created, and partly it's the formula that we've created, but we can't do it. So 2 years ago, I was in Montreal, and Demetrious was fighting. Bisping was also fighting on that card. Rampage Jackson was fighting on that card. He had just bounced between a fight in Bellator and the UFC and something. It was a really cool card. Bisping lost to that Killer Army guy, Tim Kennedy. Sorry, Tim Kennedy. I have a name issue. Yeah, he got hit in the head a lot. Kelvin Gastelum's one of my favorite fighters. I fucking forget his name sometimes, so please don't take offense. So a lot of these guys were fighting, and there was a line. I've told this story many times. There was a lineup of people, one after the other. 30 people asked Demetrious Johnson a question about ratings and pay-per-view numbers. And I went over to Matt, his coach and genius, Matt Hume, and I asked Matt Hume about Demetrious, and he said, you know, they told us a couple of years back, just keep winning, just keep getting better, just keep being the best. It's our job, meaning the machine or the network or the league or whatever. It's our job to educate the audience to see what it is Demetrious Johnson does. And Matt was like, they're not doing that job. And I'm like, Matt, I'll try. Let me try to do this. And I do try. But it is not the UFC's fault. It is not that Fox or ESPN's fault. It's the system. It's the formula. The barrier is the formula. So, and I was doing this with my friends on Periscope earlier. You know, when Karen, and again, please, I'm not criticizing the UFC. I love the UFC and I work with them. I just don't know enough about football to use an NFL example. And I don't know enough about MSNBC or Fox News to use those examples. They're all the same, right? This is not a fighting thing. This is a communication thing and a television thing. So the reason I use fighting as the example is because that's all I know. So Karen turns over to Rashad and she says, Rashad, who you got tonight? Put you on the hot seat. Who you got tonight? Tony Ferguson or Kevin Lee? And then he'll take his turn. He'll turn to the camera. Well, Karen, you know, I got to go with Tony Ferguson because Ferguson is a much more dynamic striker. He's very rangy. He comes in on different angles. You know, once he strikes with Kevin, he'll be able to push Kevin in. When Kevin gets inside, he gets that front face lock position, and he gets those dart sequences going and puts you away. Karen, I got Tony Ferguson by darts. All right. So Rashad, thank you for that, champ. And so I want to ask you, Michael Bisping, and please forgive my English accent, it's the worst ever. But I want to ask you, Michael Bisping, who do you got tonight? Do you got Kevin Lee or you got Tony Ferguson? And Mike turns, you know what, Karen? Please, again, my English accent is disgusting. Karen, you know, to be honest, I got to go with Kevin Lee because Kevin's a better boxer. When he gets inside, he gets his hands going. He's a heavier hitter, but it's his wrestling. If he can get the top position against Tony Ferguson, dish out a little ground and pound, he's going to be able to rough him up, and he's the fitter fighter. So over the course of 25 minutes, again, please, this is the worst accent ever. Over the course of 25 minutes, I think he'll grind him out. I've got Kevin Lee by decision. All right, guys, so there are your picks. And then they put them up on the screen, and that's that. Again, please. I could use the NFL. I could use CNN. I could use tennis. I could use a cooking show. I could use The Voice. This is what we do, okay? This is not Mike, Rashad, Karen. I love them, right? It's just the only thing I know. So we do that. Then we see that. And then we, the audience, go back, and we have the same conversation amongst ourselves, and that's it. That's what we do. In fact, when I have conversations about fighting, about Demetrious Johnson, I'm going to try to get into him later, people will literally say to me, look, man, just compare their wrestling, their striking, their jiu-jitsu, and then make a pick. Why the fuck would I do that? Not only can you get that anywhere, but that's the limitation that we found ourselves in. That's where we're stuck. We're fucking stuck there. So now, when we try to describe Demetrious Johnson, we don't have anything we can say. We say, Demetrious Johnson, he's the best boxer, the best Muay Thai fighter. He's unbelievable in the clinch. This guy's kickboxing is unreal. He controls distance very well. His timing is unbelievable. He's got a great chin. When he's on top of you, his wrestling is great. His ground and pound is unbelievable. Against the fence, you can't stop him. And we just say the same shit. And now if Mark and I have Mark sitting here, and we say, guys, what's going to happen against Ray Borg? And we say, well, Demetrious is too good. His striking, his grappling, his jiu-jitsu. I mean, did you see he got an armbar submission in the 24th minute and 59 seconds of a fight? And he's unbeatable right now, coached by the great Matt Hume. I don't see Demetrious losing. He's going to break Anderson Silva's record. Then we will move to the debate between people about whether he's the greatest of all time or John Jones. So we'll have a conversation about that, and then we'll leave. And we didn't fucking learn a thing. Not one fucking thing. This is the best fighter that humans have ever seen. And we are limited by our language, and we are limited by our process, and we are limited by our formula. And I don't know what to do about it. Because all I've done is notice it and spot it, and then it's bothered me, and then I've complained about it. And complaining is just inaction described as action. So I haven't done a fucking thing about it. I haven't done nothing. I just sat here and recognized it's not right, and I haven't done anything. So you try to go in and see what is really happening. What is really happening? Why is Demetrious Johnson really that good? And why can't we describe it? And you realize how quickly the organism that is MMA has evolved, and how slowly the way we present it, analyze it, and talk about it has evolved. And you realize we actually don't have the language. We don't have it. You also realize that we do this all the time. And I was talking on Periscope about, trying to figure out how do we describe this in a way that we might accept it. So if I move on and try new language, it's unwelcome. Why the fuck would you do that? Why don't you just tell me who's the better boxer, grappler, kickboxer, and jiu-jitsu guy, and then tell me who's going to win? If that's what you, and the society gets into that, we're limited by that, that's what we want, we'll be good with that, do that for the next 10 years. But then, once it gets repetitive enough, I don't have to tune in every week. I know what you're going to say. I know what they're going to do. And I don't understand what I'm seeing, really. Joe, the guy who's taught people more about martial arts than anybody since Bruce Lee, and if you take into account his reach, probably more than Bruce Lee, Joe, and we will always be forever in his debt, because we're here having this conversation because he's helped us get here. Joe likes to say that we've learned more about martial arts, or martial arts has evolved more in the last 20 years than it has in the last 2,000. And Joe was right. But I'm here to tell you, martial arts has evolved more in the last 2 years than it did in the 20 before it. It has. Way more. Way more. We're just not seeing it. We're not understanding it, and we don't have the language to discuss it. And it's not because we aren't capable of it. It's because these formulas have been created that don't allow for change, right? So I'm old, so I would put CDs into something. And CDs came in a case with an artwork and a design, and it was this big. On the back it had these songs, and you press the numbers. All of those same things, to a degree, have been still used, even though we are now file sharing. So there's no, and we're taking a file, or we're taking zeros and ones of information that make up that music. But it still has like a weird cover. What the fuck is that still there? That doesn't make any sense. You could do whatever you want. You could have a video, you could have artwork, you could have a story, you could have nothing, whatever. And it still has the same tracks positioned the same way as if it followed that, you know? We get limited, we get stuck in our ways of cataloging and understanding things. And we're absolutely there with fighting. Because at one point, we would compare Demetrious Johnson with, and why am I harping on this? I can tell you honestly, my life would be a lot simpler if I didn't obsess over these things. If I could just let this go and just fall in line and do it the way it's done. I'd make twice the money. I would be able to reach way more people. I would be able to still have the influence that I want to have on the thing that I love, which is martial arts. I don't have to fucking do this, but I do have to do this because I know that I have to go further, and I know I have to really understand what Matt Hume and Demetrious Johnson are doing in such a way that I can explain it to people that becomes the conversation instead of who's the better wrestler, boxer, or who deserves the next title shot. None of that shit matters. This is martial arts. This is this incredibly beautiful, ever-changing art form that it dates back to us battling to exist as a species, and it will again in the future. And it defines us, and it inspires us, and it teaches us how to approach life and challenges and family and growth and all of these things. And Demetrious Johnson's the best in the world at it. Why is he? What's going on in there? Like, you know, do I just need more categories? It's like, well, he slips his head better. He's got better head movement. You know, he's got a better chin. His jab is better, but his hook is not as good. But when he counters, but he's a better counter fighter. But he's, you know, like, do I just need more categories? No, that doesn't make any sense. That's what baseball did. That's what baseball did. We were limited. Baseball now has 1,000 statistics. And still, you're not really talking about even how and why this is happening, how they developed the skill to do it, what it means, what actually happened when that guy hit that ball. They just go, holy shit, he hit it. Now we ran to there, and 1 out of 1,000 times he does that, this happens, and this many double plays, and they just keep documenting it. I don't want to document it. I want to understand it. So I talked to Matt Hume back then, and we've had short conversations. I've had the intention to go and study under him, and also I've had conversations with Greg Jackson about doing it, and I've been able to do it with a little bit with Faraz, and I've been able to dig into the minds of Dwayne Ludwig and Duke Rufus and these guys a little bit, and some of the top fighters, and see what they're doing and what are they really doing, what's going on. And all Matt is doing, all he's doing, at least according to the last time I spoke with him, is trying to seek martial perfection. He's not figuring out when these guys do this, we'll do this, and there's a trend in this way, or, you know, he's just looking for martial perfection, which allows the fighter to go out and freely express himself as a martial artist. The physical expression of who he is as a human being in that moment. That's what fighting is. It is the physical expression of the creativity and the emotion and the soul of the person that's in that fight. And Matt is equipping. So he's the brain. And that's what's interesting about Matt and Demetrious Johnson. Matt's the brain. Matt has created and taught and created an open environment in which the machine, DJ, can go in and express himself. The thing about it is, and I got to get to the bottom of this after this fight, win or lose. And again, you absolutely can lose. And that's another conversation that we got to have about outcomes being the only thing. Suddenly, if Demetrious Johnson lost this fight, everyone would say, it turns out he's not actually that great. He's exactly the same guy. You can just lose fights. For fuck's sake. I don't know what. It's going to be a very difficult, challenging time. I'm trying to influence how people see something. We don't have enough words to properly describe it, and people don't want to be influenced. They don't want this necessarily. So I'm going in to try to make people see something differently, and they don't necessarily have any interest in it. But I know it's worth it. But so Demetrious, the machine, now is so far into game theory because he spends so much of his time interacting with video games, with machines, with pre-programmed strategy, with simulation, that it's changing how he expresses this martial perfection that he and his coach are seeking. So almost every situation that he's in, he is trying to be the initiator to get you to do something. Sometimes he's trying to get you to do specifically this thing. Other times he's just trying to make you do anything. And they're all wrong. Whatever choice you make, it's like a game tree. Each one leads to another one. And within that, he and his coach, Matt, have created a scenario in which he can offer you what you offer him is only wrong answers. And sometimes they're big wrong answers, like against Cejudo, when he rotated his arm up and he could drive by him pressuring the arm in a particular way. Cejudo did what's the right thing to try to get it, which exposed the rib cage, and Demetrious hit him in the ribs with a knee. So that was a very big wrong answer. Sometimes they're tiny wrong answers where a single frame, like in a video game, a single frame you start to fall behind. So if he wants me exactly somewhere, and I start falling one frame behind where he's here, and then I'm one frame behind, I can't quite get there, and then through a series of other choices, I'm one frame behind, now he has a line to the side of my chin. So we have a brilliant martial artist in Matt Hume, and of course Demetrious is a brilliant martial artist. Together, they are seeking martial perfection, and they're expressing it through the mind of not only a perfect fighting machine, but one that sees the world through this digital way. By living in the world of video games so much, it changes how he interacts with things. He sees things as momentary frames. He sees things as game tree choices. And he makes them all wrong for you. And together they've created this scenario in which even if you have a good moment or two, all he did was download more information so he has the chance to make you fall a frame or two behind. I'm doing my best to explain it. But the new job is to slowly or quickly, if it ever comes to that, I don't know if it'll be that easy, but to dissolve the limits of what we're doing right now. We don't need to do it the same way. We don't need to just sit there and have somebody ask the two guys who's going to win, and then they say one of a handful of things. And if he says, when these two get into the pocket, it's going to be fireworks. And I think, fuck, I was going to say fireworks. These are our limitations. And they're getting worse. The world's starting to see things differently. 15-year-olds see things very differently. I'll tell you, there's 15-year-old martial artists right now who understand Demetrious Johnson in ways that we are not speaking about because they're seeing the world that way. The world is different. It's an ever-changing world. So I apologize. Demetrious Johnson is the best fighter in the world. His coach is on a quest for perfection. They've been able to have, and he still needs it in this fight, or he'll lose. He needs to go in and create a state of optimum performance, which he does and always has. And he needs to have his focus, which is also developed on a higher level, something we don't yet get to talk about, but I'm researching on my flight to Russia today, along with other things about language, trying to do this. I know that this isn't it. I know that sitting down with you right now, trying to do my best to tell the story of why Demetrious Johnson is so special, I'm failing at that. All I'm trying to do is tell you, I know we're all failing at that. Maybe get you to look at the formula we're using, and the structure we're using, and see that that's where the flaw is. That's where our plateau is. We can't just add 3 more characteristics or 3 more important words or 3 more categories. We have to change how we think, or else right now, the last 2 years of evolution in fighting, more than the 20 years behind it, which were more than the 2,000 behind it, we have failed to have people see what it is. I'm going to take it on to try to do a tiny bit, to do my bit to be able to show what it is. It won't be easy, and not everybody wants it, and I'm ready for the ridicule. But this is what we have to do. It's what I have to do. Demetrious Johnson and Matt Hume, I'm going to come out and find the time to spend a week or 10 days with you. Matt's already said that would be welcome. We just haven't had a chance to do it yet. Needs to be done. It needs to be done. His story needs to be told properly, and I'll do my best. It's a scary thing. It's a scary thing to try to do something different, especially when the tools aren't there. The tools are not there. Maybe somebody can help me. Maybe there's somebody out there. I get a lot of contacts from doctors and psychologists, psychiatrists, physiologists. They seem to be enjoying my work, and that's very kind. One of those will outweigh any 1,000 Twitter trolls, I'll tell you that. Maybe some of you guys have a way to help me. Language is our barrier right now. Language and the systems as to how we look at this and how we talk about this. So I'm going to take it on. But please, when you watch Demetrious fight this weekend, just try to feel it. Just try to feel what it is. And I think it's Rogan commentating. I was going to say turn off the commentary, and that's no disrespect to anybody. But it's Joe, you have to leave it on because Joe's the fucking best. But maybe turn it down a little bit so that you allow your own thoughts to happen a little too. So you get theirs as well as your own. Just think a little differently. Try to watch it. This is one of the greatest artists, not just in fighting, in any art form ever. He's going to go out and win or lose. Because imagine if he loses. What you'll have just seen is the greatest artist falter at the same time that a new, young, desperate, hungry animal puts it on just at the right moment. And that's something special too. But when you watch Kevin and Tony, it's going to be brilliant. But watch this fight too. And watch it and really feel it. And appreciate it. Appreciate it. This is one of the greatest artists that we've ever seen. And if he's on his game, you will see something beautiful. And if he's not on his game, you will see a young, upstart, hungry animal take out one of the greatest artists ever. Take it in. Think about it differently. See what you can find. And come back and help me out somehow, because we got a long way to go, and I'm scared. Enjoy the hostilities. Blackout.